2022 meeting to order at 6:09 p.m. Apologize for our delay. All council members are present. We welcome all of our guests and visitors to provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the city secretary staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is able to be brought to you. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Our first item of business is to consider the minutes of the April 5th, 2022 regular City Council meeting. These minutes were provided in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections? If no corrections, the minutes will stand approved as submitted. And I have one proclamation today, and that is going to be for Bradley. I'm going to mispronounce this name. Kuhn? Is that right? Keen. Sorry about that. Parks Field Supervisor. So we get to proclaim today as National Arbor Day. So I, Dylan Meek, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Waco, do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2022 as National Arbor Day in the city of Waco and urge the people of Waco to join with the city council, city staff, and me as we observe National Arbor Day. The city of Waco recently received the recognition of a 2021 Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation. And on April 10th, 1872, the first Arbor Day was observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees. Trees enhance the natural beauty of our neighborhoods and cities, as well as help purify the air, produce oxygen that we breathe, and provide shelter for local wildlife. Trees in our city increase property value, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy. We urge everyone to celebrate Arbor Day and support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, as well as encourage everyone to plant a tree. In testimony whereof, witness my hand and the seal of the city of Waco this 19th day of April, 2022. Thank you, sir. Thanks for all your work. You want to say a few words? Okay, all right. Sounds good. All right. The first item of business is public hearing 2022-235.
Yes, sir, Mayor. Public hearings 235 through 237 are all subdivision variances that have the same findings, so I'd like to read those in the record first, and then we'll go through each one individually. The findings are the extraordinary hardships or significant practical difficulties may result from strict compliance with the subdivision ordinance regulation, and the effect of the variance will not be detrimental to public safety, health, welfare, or injurious to other property, and due to specific conditions of the site involved, strict enforcement of these regulations would impose an undue hardship on the applicant. So for 235, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a variance to the Waco subdivision ordinance to the requirement for a public water source for the proposed extension of the public water source for the proposed subdivision plat entitled Final Plat of the Lindsay Farm Estates Addition Lots 1 through 4, Block 1. By a vote of 7-0, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the variance request in accordance with Section 7.1001 of the subdivision ordinance with the following conditions. Condition 1 is that permits for the water wells must be approved by the Southern Trinity Groundwater Conservation District and water wells installed in before development of the addition. 2, a note on the plat must be added stating the lots are served by private wells and are not a public water source. And 3, further subdivision of the lots that increase the number of lots will require the extension of the public water main to serve the new subdivision.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments, and I believe we do have one person here to speak on this item, and that is Mr. Kyle Woolard.
Good evening. My name is Kyle Woolard. I live at 505 Keys Creek Drive in Waco, Texas. I'm here just requesting city council approval for that plat and for the variance for the private water source. With that property being outside the city of Waco's incorporated limits and available water being more than 1.5 miles away, this is basically our only water source for that property. Excuse me. Testing has been done by Waco Drilling, and the Southern Trinity Groundwater has stated that they would provide the permits. Those letters were given to the zoning commission at their last meeting on March 29th. We have made notes to the plat that these are privately maintained wells, which would release the city of Waco from any liability for water quality. In addition to that, we've got on-site septic studies already done. Those have been approved as well. And also on this property, we have deed restrictions that are in place to keep from any further development of the 4 lots. That's all I have. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any questions? Nope. All right, is there anyone else here to speak on this item? We will close the public hearing, and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move to approve the requested variance.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield. Rodriguez. Borderoot.
Yes.
Palmer. Holmes. Meek.
Carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-236.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a variance to the Waco subdivision ordinance to the requirement that an ingress-egress easement meet the minimum requirements for streets for the proposed subdivision plat entitled Steinbeck Farm Edition, lots 2 through 4, block 1. By a vote of 7-0, the Plan Commission recommended approval of the variance request in accordance with section 7.1001 of the subdivision ordinance with the following conditions. One, that the dedication of the utility easement along with the 50-foot ingress-egress easement. And 2, no further subdividing will be approved until all required infrastructure is put in place and built to City of Waco standards.
Are there any questions for staff? We'll open a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I will ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval of the variance.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield.
Yes.
Rodriguez. Borderoot.
Yes.
Palmer. Holmes. Meek.
Motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-237.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a variance to the Waco subdivision ordinance requirement that block lengths not exceed 1,000 feet for the proposed subdivision plat entitled Preliminary Plat of the Chapel Wells Edition. By a vote of 7-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the variance request in accordance with 7.1001 of the Waco subdivision ordinance. No conditions on this one.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comment. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If not, we'll close the public hearing, and I will ask for a motion.
Approval of the variance.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield.
Yes.
Rodriguez. Borderoot.
Yes.
Palmer. Holmes.
Aye.
Meek.
Motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-238.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution approving the following subdivision plats. Final plat of the Lindsay Farm Estates Edition, lots 1 through 4, block 1, ETJ. Final plat of the Steinbeck Farm Edition, lots 2 through 4, block 1. Preliminary plat of the Chapel Wells Edition. Amended preliminary plat of the Sanderson Farms Edition. Final plat and construction plans of Chapel Ridge Edition Phase 10. And final plat and construction plans of Chapel Ridge Edition Phase 12. Plan Commission did recommend approval of all these plats.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open up a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Not, we will close the public hearing. I'll ask for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Barfield. Rodriguez. Borderoot.
Yes.
Palmer. Holmes.
Aye.
Meek.
Carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-239.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution granting a special permit to Christine and Dennis Nolan for a short-term rental type 1 in R1A zoning district on property described as 1.44 acres of land in the city of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, being part of lots 14, 15, and 16, Block 2 of the Sturgis Acres addition to said city. Plat of said addition being recorded in volume 376, page 579, McLennan County, Texas deed records. Said 1.44 acres being that same tract conveyed to Walter L. Poston Jr. and spouse S. Renee Poston by deed dated June 2nd, 1997, and recorded in volume 149, page 270 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, known as 3636 North 29th Street.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing, and I do have a card for this. The proponents can go first. Are the proponents here? Would they like to speak? Come on up.
Hi, will I have rebuttal time if there's any opposition?
What's that? Yes, you will have a rebuttal time. I apologize.
Thank you. So my name is Christine Nolan. I live at 3636 North 29th Street. A little about myself. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse in behavioral health for 20 years. My husband works for Baylor, which is what brought us to Waco. We have 2 college-age kids. We love it here. We've been here just since July. We bought a fixer in the spirit of the town, I think, and we've had our hands full with people at the house almost every day trying to make improvements. It was not in good shape, didn't even have a smoke alarm when we bought it. Branches fell, pulled the electric out. It was actually, a dangerous situation at times in the house, but we love it and we've poured our heart and soul into it. Part of the reason we bought the house is there's a small cottage. It's a pool house and then another little small cottage on the property, and it's kind of our dream to have an Airbnb. And we just want to host one group at a time. We wanted to use both cottages, even though one is not habitable at this time. A little bit about that, I know there's a lot of pushback in the community that people feel if there's an Airbnb, there are less places for people to live. This isn't a structure that ever would have been occupied by the public. Our lot is quite large. I think it's 3 lots, so everything is quite spaced out. There are a lot of trees, a lot of privacy. We value our privacy, but we love people, and we'd love to host people in the city. I'd love to use the property, as we intended when we bought it. We followed all the legal guidelines, and which shows we're ethical and forthcoming. And our neighborhood is really charming. It is private and quiet, but we are in the city. We're right off Park Lake, so there's a great deal of traffic. We do get shaken by the by the testing. There's also a lot of wildlife, so it's actually a really wonderful place to live. We're in between Cameron Park and the lake. I think one of the things that benefits the city, aside from the tax money going into the coffers, is that I think the more interesting places you have to offer people to stay when they come to the city makes the city more desirable as well. I was concerned about crime, not because anything specific to Waco, but just having people come to the city and, have their valuables with them. I've done research, and there's no indication that there's any additional crime that Airbnbs bring or that there's additional crime that affects people who are visiting them. How much time do I have left? I've brought some pictures. The first picture is of our backyard. There's no fencing requirement in the ordinances for Airbnbs. We do have 3 fences between us and the neighbors behind us, so we also are going to have cameras on the property, quiet time. We're concerned about our well-being, safety, enjoyment of our property, so anything that would affect a neighbor would affect us first and foremost. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Eddie and Jessica Mazonik. Good evening.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time here. It brings me no pleasure to meet our neighbors this manner. I've had the luxury of meeting 3 other neighbors prior to the Nolans moving in, and did not have that opportunity to meet them in any other manner. Unfortunately, this was the way we were presented with them being behind us. My wife and I spent a better part of a Saturday, 2 weekends ago, going around the neighborhood. We've got over 50% of the people within this 200-foot buffer zone to sign a petition against the short-term rental proposal. You know, the other thing that we learned from people that live in that area too, that there's, I mean, most of these people, they're lived in this neighborhood longer than we have. My wife and I have only lived here about 7 years in that home, I should say. However, we polled, you know, a dozen different homeowners that have all lived in this area for 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 32 years in some cases. And this is just a really established neighborhood. That it's not a transition neighborhood. It's not a neighborhood that's changing form by any means. And we want to maintain that neighborhood. We want to keep the integrity the way it is. You know, we don't want commercial activity in an R1 zoned residential area. I mean, I know that as Nolan highlighted, you know, the safety and crime concerns may be minimal, but there's the unknown factor. You don't know. There's no prerequisites for, you know, doing a background check on anybody that's going to rent a short-term rental. I mean, you know, my wife and I love staying at short-term rentals when we go to visit places too, but we're looking for places that are close to, you know, the commercial areas, closer to the touristy parts of a city, and that's not North Waco. That's not where we live. I mean, MacArthur and Park Lake is not a tourist destination. You know, that's all downtown Waco. So, I mean, as much as I love short-term rentals and love to stay at them in certain parts of the town or other cities, you know, North Waco is just not the place for it. There's not any active ones on our street, on our side of Park Lake currently. We certainly like to keep it that way. You know, and given the style of our neighborhood as well, the value of the properties are going to take a hit. You know, it's not a neighborhood that's going to welcome the short-term rentals. I mean, as evidenced by the over 50% of the area people, the residents in this area have, you know, written objection to it. And we just want to maintain the integrity, not just for ourselves and our family, but also for the benefit of our neighbors that have been here for 15, 20, 25 years. You know, these people made a commitment to stay in the community. You know, after Hillcrest left, I know a lot of people moved to different parts of the city, you know, and there's a lot of people in our neighborhood that stayed and wanted to maintain the integrity of the neighborhood. And I probably keep saying that same thing over and over again, but it really is meaningful. I mean, it brought us to that neighborhood for that matter. And we just don't want to see that change. It's just not the right part, not the right part of town for it. So I just, you know, hope the city council can be reasonable about this, and I wish the Nolans the best, but this is just not the right part of town for it.
Thank you. And I don't have any other cards. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? All right, Ms. Nolan, you have an opportunity to rebut for how many minutes? I should know this. Is it a full 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. So I'd like to point out that in our neighborhood, the Ann Richards house is, there are two houses between us and the Ann Richards house. So if you go online to, I think, wacohistory.org, there are multiple tours that you can take in the city. So we actually are on a tour route. Park Lake is a very busy street. We're very close to the airport. So I know that people, I feel like Waco is the kind of town where when a parent has their adult child come home, they still see them as a child. Waco has a wonderful feel of a small town, but it's very much a city. We love our neighborhood. We haven't been there as long as other people, but we certainly have invested everything we have, our time, our heart, our soul, into our neighborhood and into our home. There are Airbnbs nearby. At the end of Park Lake, there's a nice enclave of high-end homes, and there's actually Airbnbs there. And the woman is working to turn it into actually a B&B with multiple clients staying there. There are multiple Airbnbs in the area, and even though it's not on our side of Park Lake, it's literally a few houses down on the other side of Park Lake. So there are active Airbnbs, and if I may point out, there's no indication that there aren't people operating Airbnbs without a license. Another thing is when people have dinner guests over, when people have a roommate, when people invite their coworkers over, they don't vet them. They don't do background checks on them either. Just because someone's staying in an Airbnb doesn't mean there's any more crime that they're bringing anything to the neighborhood that wouldn't already be in the neighborhood. In every neighborhood, regardless of income, regardless of background, there's going to be crime, there's going to be issues with abuse, there's going to be substance abuse. Airbnb is not bringing that into neighborhoods. So I've provided some pictures. I just wanted to provide a picture. I know our neighbors were concerned about their children and their safety. The first picture is from our backyard. They have a playhouse they were concerned about. You can't tell what that is from where our guests are going to be staying. It could be a shed. I'm sure it's charming and lovely, but we just see the back of their property. The second just kind of indicates the space. Where our guest would stay does not even back up to their property. And then the third is just kind of the guest area, and you can see how treed and shaded it is. And as a matter of fact, it's not visible from the front. And I provided those pictures when we went through zoning. And so I'd also like to say that, we've paid the fees, which were, quite a lot in addition to making improvements to the property. And yes, when we make improvements to our property, we do benefit from that. But, we've gone through all the steps. And I know my 3 minutes is up, but we've actually exceeded the expectations and requirements and do still have, if passed tonight, we do still have somebody coming to do an inspection of our property. Homeowners don't have that, and not every house in our neighborhood is owner occupied. So thank you very much.
Yep. All right, is there anyone else here? Well, I guess it was a rebuttal, so I think just the proponent gets a rebuttal. So is there, we'll close the public hearing. And I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move that we disapprove the special permit application.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I'll just say, and I've articulated this position many times, but I will do it again. The city has zoned certain parts of the city for neighborhood use, for single-family living, and a home is probably the single biggest investment that most people have. And I think when you buy that home, you have the expectation of peaceable enjoyment and also the expectation that other homeowners are going to comply with the zoning requirements. So to me, when a special night-to-night rental permit or short-term rental permit is requested, that approximate neighbors should have a voice in whether that is granted or not. I think I've been consistent in that in my 5 years on council. So in this case, where we have it's over 35 and 50% are opposed to the permit, I will be voting in favor of disapproval.
Any other discussion? Please poll the council.
Hold on one second. I do have a question. I have a question for Clint, actually. What would be the difference if they used their the pool house as like an apartment?
So the difference between that and a short-term rental would just be the length of time. So 30 days or more.
So they could, so if they decided to withdraw this permit and said, I'm gonna lease this as an apartment because the only difference is that they're short and long-term, so, right?
They could do long-term rentals, yes.
Okay. I do want to just make some clarity. I know we've walked this short-term rental journey for quite some time and tried to figure out the most palatable decision that we could for our city and citizens to take into account the wishes and rights of property owners and tourists. I think, with this, one of the considerations that the opponent may remember is that they're living on property. And so the issues that you would have with a renter would be the issues that they would have with a renter because they're there. This is one of those things that it always feels like I'm not sure we get right or wrong, because as a person like you who travels often, more likely than not with a group of people, that we would fare much better in a home than we would a hotel, because the stories get real funny at 2:00 in the morning. so we choose and make decisions to rent houses as opposed to being in hotels. But we also at the same time have to make decisions that are at the betterment of our constituents. I think we did that when we shifted how we allowed the type of residences and the type of zoning and to still sustain STRs, and by changing them to where you had to be an owner occupied in order to get a license these days. You have to be owner occupied, because I think that still adds some of the responsibility and connectivity to the owner, because they're not gone. It's not someone bought a property and then, oh, I'm gonna capitalize on the tourism boom in Waco. But I'm a part of this community, but still need to exercise my rights as a property owner to potentially earn revenue. So, I mean, it's a very fine line that we walk, but I do think that in this instance, there's enough separation of space between the nearest resident. I know what you're saying, Councilmember Holmes, and I get it, and I knew, when I saw it, I said, well, we know how this is gonna go, because you were very consistent in that point. But I just think that this situation, as we look at things case by case, presents itself a little differently.
City Secretary, could you read the
motion?
yes.
The motion was to disapprove the application.
Any further discussion? Please poll the council.
Bearfield,
No.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Borderoot,
Yes.
Palmer,
Yes.
Holmes, Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and the motion for the application to be granted fails. Or the application for the short-term rental fails. Next, we have public hearing 2022-240.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the zoning map shall be changed to a certain property described as Lot B, C, D, H, K, L, M, and N, Block 1, and Lots A, C, and D, Block 2, Bush Edition, known as 2421 and 2423 Bagby Avenue, shall be changed from C2 and R2 district classification and be designated into R3C district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finally determining that the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 7-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the zone change request based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is in conformance with the land use component of the comprehensive plan. 2, the property meets all area and width requirements for R3C zoning. 3, the existing public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses in R3C. 4, the existing zoning allows multifamily, and there is other multifamily zoning in the vicinity of subject property. And 5, the proposed R3C zoning is more compatible with the surrounding area than the existing C2 zoning.
Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing for comments, and I do have one card, and that is George. Thank you. Can you clarify your name at the podium?
It's George.
Okay. Agus. Got it. Thank you.
Mayor and council. I came just on behalf of Scott Haney, Todd Haney, and then also Bud Jr. Haney, with regard to any questions as to the rezoning of this particular property. So.
Any questions? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? We will close the public hearing, and
Mayor,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Mayor.
My name's Dennis Richmond. I reside at 7200 Dallas Parkway in Plano, Texas. I am the developer and the one that is got this property under contract with the Hain Trust Company, and I'm here to answer questions as well.
Any questions? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else there to speak? We will close the public hearing, and I will ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll just say that, I mean, I love the fact that there's a baseball field there, and I think a lot of us are concerned that we're losing this kind of green space in the neighborhood, but the overriding factor to me on this one is the fact that it's currently zoned C2. Doesn't have to be a baseball field. You could do whatever else you want to do that fits within the C2 deal. So moving it from commercial to residential, I think is, in the housing stock situation that we're in and the housing that we're talking about needing in the next few years in Waco, I think it's timely, and I'll be voting in favor of the rezoning.
Is there any other discussion? I'm excited about some of the park stuff coming down the pipeline for green space in District 2 with, as we presented earlier, Floyd Casey and Bells Hill, and also Cotton Palace Park. So green space in District 2 continues to be a priority of this council.
Yay.
Please poll the council.
Fairfield.
Yes.
Rodriguez. Borderoot. Palmer. Holmes. Meek.
Yes. Motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-241.
All right, bear with me, this is a long one. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing that the comprehensive plan be amended to change the land use designation from urban residential to mixed-use flex on the following described properties. One, being a .59 acres of land out of the J. French survey, being part of that same tract of land conveyed to E.F. Ashelman as recorded in volume 807, page 51 of the McLennan County Deed Records, property ID 314683. Two, being a 12-acre land, more or less, and being the west one-half of the 24 acres of land contained in blocks 5 and 6 of the Joshua M. Blake subdivision on the Joseph French Headright survey, about 3 miles southeast of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, according to a map or plat thereof, recorded in volume 194, pages 8 and 9. That's really old. Of McLennan County, Texas, deed and map records, and being a part of the property conveyed to Casey Fried Sam by P.R. Woldridge by deed dated March 3rd, 1921, and recorded in volume 325, page 498 of the McLennan County Deed Records, save and accept a 2-acre tract of land conveyed to Vicente M. Cesarez by deed record. Yes, ma'am. By deed recorded in volume 1423, page 753 of the deed records of McLennan County, Texas, part of the property ID 173906, and 3 being a tract of land of 1.77 acres, more or less, out of the abandoned San Antonio and Aransas Pass Railroad right-of-way in the Joshua M. Blake subdivision of the Joseph French Headright survey, more particularly described in deed record, deed from Bob L. Thomas, County Judge of McLennan County, Texas, and on behalf of McLennan County, Texas, to Brian Welch, to Pearlie Mae Welch, dated September 17th, 1979, and recorded in volume 1330, page 14 of deed records, McLennan County, Texas, part of property ID 173906. Known as 100 Garden Drive and located southwest of the intersection of Garden Drive and South University Parks. Providing that the Code of Ordinance of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 in Chapter 28 zoning of said code, providing that the properties shall be changed so that the properties described above shall be 03 to 02 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finally determined that the meeting in which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 7-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of land use designation change based on the following findings. One, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for zoning districts allowed in the proposed mixed-use flex land use designation. And 2, the property is located at the intersection of 2 major streets, Garden Drive and South University Parks Drive. Plan Commission also recommended approval of zoning based on the following findings. 1, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan as revised in the purpose of the college and university neighborhoods district. 2, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in O2 zoning. 3, the property is located near the intersection of 2 major streets, Garden Drive and South University Parks Drive. And 4, the property meets all area and width requirements for O2 zoning.
Clint, I missed that. Do you mind saying that again? Bad joke. Are there any questions for staff? We'll open a public hearing for comments. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? If not, I will close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move for approval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Please poll the council.
Bearfield.
Yes.
Rodriguez. Borderoux.
Yes.
Palmer. Holmes. Meek.
That motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-242.
Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider an ordinance of the city of Waco, Texas, providing that the comprehensive plan be amended to change its land use designation from suburban residential to mixed-use flex on property described as 1.6 acres out of the Carlos Ocampo grant, being a part of the residue of that called 4.3 acres of land in the deed to Wazir A. Dahani, recorded in volume 183, page 28 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, known as the 1.6 acres of land out of the 4200 South University Parks Drive. Providing that the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 in Chapter 28 zoning of said map, provided that the zoning map shall be changed so that certain property described above shall be changed from R1B to C2 district classification, providing for abilities, providing severability clause, and finally determining the meeting in which this ordinance has passed is open to the public as required by law. By a vote of 7-0, Plan Commission recommended approval of the land use designation change based on the following findings. One, the public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in the mixed-use flex land use designation. Two, the property is located near the intersection of two major streets, Loop 340 and South University Parks Drive. Plan Commission also recommended approval of zone change based on the following findings. One, the proposed zoning is keeping with the land use component of the comprehensive plan as revised. Two, public infrastructure is adequate to provide for uses allowed in C2 zoning district. Three, the property meets all the area and width requirements for C2 zoning. Four, there is C2 zoning adjacent to the subject property. And five, the proposed C2 zoning will bring the existing commercial building into conformance with the zoning ordinance.
Good. Are there any questions for staff? We will open a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? I'll close the public hearing and I'll ask for a motion.
Move for disapproval on first reading.
Second.
Any discussion?
I think that for me, I have concerns with the proximity to, there's a daycare right there. I think that the way the lot is split, it puts us in line for some issues going further, backing into the residential, and that's why I'm disapproving.
I agree with council member, and that's why I seconded her motion.
Any other discussion? This one's a hard one for me. I really understand Councilmember Bearfield and Councilmember Rodriguez where you're coming from. I get torn up over this because there's a commercial building there. And so with deep respect, I'll vote the other way. But what I've heard from Councilmember Rodriguez's advocacy is that I'd just like the record to reflect to make sure we don't change the zoning of that back portion of the lot. Is something that I would hope that future councils would bear in mind from a staff recommendation perspective. That's my thoughts around that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Please poll council.
Bearfield.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Borderoux.
Yes.
Palmer.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Meek.
No, that motion carries. And the next item on the agenda is the resolutions, which the following resolutions have been pulled from the consent agenda and will be voted on separately. Resolution 2022-243, 246, and 248. And I have a card for resolution 243, and that is Mr. Ephraim Herring.
Good evening, Council. My name is
Good
Ephraim
evening.
Herman. I live at 1044 Chestnut. The reason why, there was 3 reasons why I had questions about giving this entity money and funds. There's 2 reasons. The one reason it stood out, it's been 6 years of money. That's 6 years of money that was not properly used. The second reason is there's two entities the partners of the state, of the city of Waco, that get that money. One of them's grassroots, other one's NeighborWorks Waco. So that I'm thinking, okay, if they're the one that are controlling factor that gets that money out to the public, and we got a backlog of leftover money, why wasn't this brought up earlier? Because right now, District 1 is a red line district. So why wasn't this not, and we have housing charge in Waco, so why was this not brought out before now? And we bring it out to give money to an agency that was supposed to be helping us build houses and get individuals to own houses. So that's a red flag to me. Anybody looking at that? And the last one was, I was talking to a constituent the other day, and he rented from this individual, and he had problems, and he contacted the city, and nothing was done. He moved out. So that's my concern is we're taking tax dollars for citizens and giving it to this entity that's supposed to be a partnership with us. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. Is there anyone else to speak on Resolution 2022-243? If not, I will ask for a motion on that resolution.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, question.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
No.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is a Galen question or a City Manager Ford, but one of the things that is talked about in our materials is that this will go for affordable housing rent. I am curious what that rental rate is, and if that is in paper somewhere in the contract, that if we grant this money, that we can be assured that that will be at a more market rate.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. What we have had discussions with them is about that rent, the unit being rented to someone that is at 60% or below of the area median income. What we've done previously, and I believe it was 2016, 2017, an action plan. NeighborWorks did perform a rental rehab project that was allocated during that action plan, but it was recently, that activity was carried out in the last couple of years, where we have requested that they rent to a certain income level, and we've determined that that rent needs to be for a period of time between 3 to 5 years. So as the lease comes up, we actually review the person that they plan to rent to document and ensure they're in compliance with those terms regarding that affordable rent.
So just to be sure, if I am living at 58% of the area median income, this is going to be affordable within 30% of my household income?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Excellent.
We have had the discussion about timeliness for marchotos before.
Yes.
And I think that I know in work session we had pulled this resolution because I don't know, and it may take a future work session with our chotos about their timelines and points of delivery, and specific strategic plans in alignment with our housing plan.
Yes.
And what we need to do. But it is problematic that for almost what could be another home, the cost of that. So, and I don't know if it was just leftover because in those years wood wasn't $1 million or what, but there's reason why these cost analysis equal from 7 years ago equate to what it would cost to build, not profit, but build a home, basically. And I have some concerns with that, just because I want to know how that we're being the best stewards of the federal dollars that we issue to our chotos. So, yeah, I'm not voting for this.
Honor, is there more information that you want and need, or do you feel like this is something that you've, not to put you on the spot here, council member, but is this something that, never mind, I'll withdraw the question. Just asking if there's more information down the road that would be helpful to you making a decision on this resolution.
Well, I want to make sure that the community housing development organizations that we partner with are in line and in step with the vision and strategic plan of the city where we are now. Councils change, the directives of our needs of our communities change. And I want to make sure that they're in line with us. And at this point, before you can take, all this back money, let's pause for a minute and see where we are and make sure we're all on the same page.
Galen, question, what's the consequence to taking said pause on something like, on this vote?
There is none. Could just bring it back and explore additional options that.
And if council got comfortable with allocating it per this recommendation, we could make that, we could pass that resolution at any point. There's not like a time limit to bring this one back, is that correct?
That is correct.
I mean, it's been several years already.
What's that?
I said it's been several years already.
Right? I was like, we're in 7 years now, so I'm sure.
Know why there was so much lack of using this money? Let us know. Well, there weren't people applying or whatever, but
Well,
I think the council needs to know, well, I do, I need to know why they're not from wave 2015 to 2022.
Well, to explain, this is just program income. It's generated from the repayment of loans that were provided. Some date as far back as 2000. And so as the income is generated, they're trying to gather enough income to actually perform a project. And before we're actually able to allocate those funds, we have to do an amendment to our current action plan to give them the ability to use those funds in a particular year that they're wanting to use them in. So they have to approach us and say, here's what we would like to do with the amount of funding that we have. So then we bring it forward for an amendment, and this is part of that amendment process to be able to allocate that funding to them for use.
So Galen, just to clarify, the program year 2015 program income of $3,000 has not been sitting for 7 years. Is that fair to say?
No, it's generated off of loans that for a period of time, depending on like maybe over the last, maybe potentially 3 or 4 years, just because people are making monthly payments. And so if you take, back in 2016 or 2017, there was an allocation given to NeighborWorks to do something similar to this project. So as the money accumulates over time, you basically kind of build up enough funding in your pot to be able to carry out a project. And from a housing perspective, you're trying to build up enough to carry out an activity related to housing. So we're talking about the purchase and rehabilitation of a unit such as a condo or townhome.
So it's not so much neglect to properly utilize these funds in a timely manner. It's just it's the matter of being able to aggregate these funds so that they can be invested towards further kind of program.
Yes.
Okay, I think that's helpful. I'm sorry,
No.
I'm somewhat new to this world.
Well, I'm not, but it's still, the years confused me. I said, they're not using that money. So maybe the way the resolution was worded confused us. So you're saying that these years, it was amount of payment from the loans that the money that they got in from payments from the loans that they have given out before.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, see, that's totally different in my mind, but the way this is worded doesn't tell me that. It just looks like, oh my gosh, they didn't use their money in that amount of time. What happened?
Yeah.
I mean, That's what I thought.
No, I mean, and Councilmember Borderoot is correct. This is the way it is. I still think, we could have a conversation with all of our chodos and they can explain, because I'm sure many of us have met with them one-on-one and talked about their strategic plan, talked about the goals, talk about moving forward, how it aligns with our housing development plan and, our affordable housing plan. But I still think that this is something that needs to be further discussed.
Any other discussion?
Could I amend my motion, or do you have to do that? Would it help to have it subject to the final review of what their deployment plan is?
Well, your motion was just to disapprove?
No, the
No, his
motion was to approve.
It's been moved and seconded to approve this.
Yes,
I just wanted to amend it, approval subject to review of the final NeighborWorks plan and.
you can do that.
I think she said all the chodos.
All of
We
them.
need to
Yeah,
hear
I mean, I know
from
this
all the chodos.
specifically names NeighborWorks, but I did want to hear from all of them. Jennifer?
Y'all are making me pull out Robert's Rules for Dummies.
Come on now.
Give me just a second.
Got it. Or something satisfactory there, or we just
Trish is telling me that you can amend it if you want, so I'm gonna trust her.
amend it. I would like to amend
Terry,
the
I'm for the win.
motion to make it subject to the final review and approval of how these chodo funds are utilized.
Why don't we just table it for this meeting?
I think.
Well, I mean-
With the amendment, it's fine for me.
Are you sure? All right, we have a motion, an amended motion. Do we need a minute second? Or second for the amendment?
We do need a second.
I'll second it as I seconded the first, just kind of a loyal second.
All right, motion and second. Please poll the council.
On the amendment first, Councilmember Bearfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Yes.
Borderoot,
Yes.
Palmer, Holmes, Meek,
Yes, the motion for the amendment carries, and now I'll ask to please poll the council on the amended motion.
on the main motion.
The main, okay.
Bearfield,
No.
Would you repeat
Is
the
that
motion?
right? I was like, is that right? So the amendment doesn't cancel the original?
it does not.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, so no.
Read me the,
The motion was to approve the request. Bearfield,
No.
Rodriguez,
no.
Borderoot,
No?
Palmer,
No.
Holmes,
Yes.
Meek,
No. That motion fails, and,
I think the effect ended up, the net effect.
but the amendment passed.
Yeah.
So I will move on to, I misspoke earlier. I said that we had a card for Resolution 2022-246. I don't believe there's a card for Resolution 2022-246. Does anyone here speak on that item? Okay, no. Then we will move on to Resolution 2022-248, and I will ask for a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Please poll the council.
and this is on 248, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And council members, Borderoot and Palmer disqualified. Okay, Bearfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez, Holmes, Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to public hearing 2022-249. We have a card from Dr. Alan Northcutt for that.
Just to clarify, it's just a resolution.
Oh, did I say public hearing? I'm sorry, resolution 2022-249.
Alan Northcutt, and you should have a handout. Once again, we're purchasing pickup trucks. Electric versions were excluded, but the reasons given here are, to me, very questionable. It talks about towing capacity, and in fact, the F-150 and the Rivian have 10 to 11,000 pound capacity. They mention rough terrain as if, the Rivian and the F-150 cannot handle that. There seems to be a misconception throughout this that somehow EVs are fragile and not as tough as regular, or not regular, but gasoline trucks. Four-wheel drive is mentioned, and in fact, the Rivian and F-150 both offer that. Even various weather conditions is listed. So I find these very poor reasons to exclude these vehicles. I see no life cycle cost analysis here, and if it wasn't provided by the sellers, that can be done, in-house with the price of gasoline, the price of electricity, and records of oil change and so forth. You can determine that. And further, the information in the agenda packet on availability of these vehicles has some errors in it. It's stated that the Rivian R1T will be available in 2023. Actually, it began sale last year. They've sold about 1,000 of those, and they're for sale now. And you can go on the website, you can configure and order the Rivian. And I have some of those to show you, different cars, how you can order and configure online. The F-150 is expected to begin sale this fall, and you can also order that now. You can order or pre-order the Chevy Silverado, the Cybertruck, and the Canoe now. And why does this matter? Well, transportation sector is the #1 source of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S., and we know that these vehicles that we're driving eventually will be electric. So it's just a matter of, do we move forward now, as the Sustainability Board has recommended, to fight against climate change, or do we continue to contribute to global warming and to air pollution in Waco? As Antonio Guterres, UN Secretary General, stated, we are sleepwalking to climate catastrophe. It doesn't have to be this way, really. In April, Los Angeles announced that it would electrify its entire fleet, including 10,000 garbage trucks. About the same time, Boston announced that it would electrify all its fleet, starting with school buses.
Thank you, Dr. Northcutt.
Okay. Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak on this item? If not, I'll ask for a motion on Resolution 2022-249.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I have a quick comment. As we've had ongoing conversations about the fleet, I have made the commitment to not vote in approval until we see the right sizing of our fleet with our full electrification plan. So I am eagerly awaiting seeing that from the city manager's office. And we were discussing an agenda review earlier today. I was in Seattle for a funeral this past week, but it was really interesting to be in a city that's so much farther along than we are in terms of the electrification. And I went to parks, and I went to CVS and grocery stores, and there were chargers for electric vehicles all over the place. And I think it really made me think of Dr. Northcutt and the prophetic voice that he is for us in showing this is where we're going as a community, this is where we're going as a world, and we need to be cognizant of that as we are planning for the city. Using Mayor Meek's words, we have to have our 20-year goggles on. So while we don't have any electrified vehicles in this particular resolution, I am hopeful that this is a conversation we're taking very seriously. And as we create our new parking lot, and as we build out some of these big capital improvements, that we will also need to seriously consider how we make space for the future that will be a largely electrified fleet. So for those reasons, I will be voting in opposition of this.
One of the things I would like to add is, if I know that there, have been conflicting conversations about the availability of one as opposed to the other. As we begin to have these conversations and look at it, can we set a goal to, in this class, we would have at least X amount of electric vehicles by said date? I mean, I get that it's that may be squishy, but I think, if we said, let's try a truck. Let's try a truck. I don't think that would break us.
No, not at all.
I mean, a full-size truck, not I know we have the smaller ones.
I think I continue to sit in the position where, like y'all, waiting on the vehicle replacement plan, which the council approved funding for, to include an EV sub-consultant to advise us on just that very thing, is where should we start? And I suspect they'll say we need to start with a stronger goal in sedans, and then a more moderate goal in light-duty and medium-duty trucks, and they'll likely say that the large format vehicles are farther off. And so I too, like y'all, and like Dr. Northcutt, I believe, see the future in that and see where the world's going and look forward to us setting a goal and much more than that, achieving it at some point. So we are planning, I believe Paul told me, in mid-June to be at budget and audit. I'm looking for confirmation from Kelly. Is that the plan with that? Yeah, so anybody that's curious about our strategies in that briefing, I would encourage you to tune in to budget and audit meeting in June for that update.
And there should be some specifics at that update. I'm looking forward to it because as my constituent and EV advocate, Ms. Porter, that sits in the audience, and she gives me a round to it every time she sees me. And so we will eventually get around to it. And so at this point now, we have at least a date, a jump-off date to look forward to. So I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Any other discussion? Please, public counsel.
Bearfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
Aye.
Borderoot,
Yes.
Palmer,
No.
Holmes,
Aye.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. And we'll move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of Resolution 2022-243 through 256, except for 243, 248, and 249. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Any discussion? Please, public counsel.
Bearfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez, Borderoot, Palmer, Holmes,
Aye.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries, and we'll move to ordinance 2022-257.
An ordinance providing for the extension of certain boundary limits of the city of Waco, Texas, and the annexation of certain territory consisting of approximately 215.88 acres of land, more or less, the 215.88 acre tract, being all of that tract of land in McLennan County, Texas, out of Carlos Ocampo Survey, abstract number 32, and being part of that called 222.816 acres of land described in a deed to Crystal Springs Farm LLC, as recorded in McLennan County Clerk's document 2015-015999 of the official public records of McLennan County, Texas, being located between Bagby Avenue, FM 3476, and Interstate Highway 35 southeast of the intersection of Gateway Boulevard and Bagby Avenue, FM 3476, and further located within Waco's extraterritorial jurisdiction, which said territory lies adjacent to and adjoins the present boundary limits of the city of Waco, Texas, providing for the designation of industrial as the comprehensive plan land use designation, and the designation of M2 light industrial district zoning for a portion of the 215.88 acre tract of land consisting of 192.76 acres, providing for the designation of office industrial flex as the comprehensive plan land use designation, and the designation of O2 office residence district zoning for a portion of the 215.88 acre tract of land consisting of 23.11 acres, assigning the annexed territory to City Council District 3, amending City of Waco Precinct 60 to include the annexed territory, directing that the city precinct district map be revised to reflect that change, and providing voting location at any City of Waco voting center, providing the said territory bears pro rata part of taxes and entitling inhabitants to all rights and privileges of citizens, and binding inhabitants to acts and laws of the city, adopting a service plan, providing a severability clause, providing for publishing of the ordinance, providing for penalties therefore, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed, open the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on April 5th, 2022.
Motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please, public counsel.
Bearfield,
Yes.
Rodriguez, Borderoot, Palmer, Holmes,
Aye.
Meek,
Yes, that motion carries. Next, the hearing of visitors. During the hearing of visitors section of the agenda, we provide an opportunity for the public to present concerns or address issues that are not matters for consideration listed on the agenda. Council is unable to conduct discussion, but will listen, ask staff to look into concerns, and will provide follow-up. Please provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation, and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. The first card I have is Ms. Teresa Porter. Good evening, Ms. Porter.
Howdy, y'all. Teresa Porter, Heart of Texas Electric Vehicle Association. Do I need to put this in full screen? Full screen.
Can we do full screen, or is this the best we can do?
As big as it's going to get with PDF. Oh.
We can see it.
Apparently, this is as big as we can make the PowerPoint presentation, Ms. Porter.
Okay, there we go. All right, Teresa Porter, Texas Electric Vehicle Association. Friday is Earth Day. Happy Drive Electric Earth Day, y'all. I am not your stereotypical EV owner, but if Big Daddy Don Garlitz can do it, so can I. People have a lot of different reasons for driving electric. I was curious. It's a very different creature with around 20 moving parts instead of 20,000. Full electric has a lower total cost of ownership due to less maintenance and predictable fuel costs. State rebate program is currently open, making some new cars $2,500 cheaper. No incentives for used yet, but they're cheap. There are some questions you need to ask yourself before you buy. Don't go to the used car lots in Franklin. Buy from a trusted source that has EV certified technicians. Not all cars have in-your-face battery health status like my first generation Leaf. You need to know what you look for when buying an EV. I get asked this a lot. The short answer is, it depends. Not much. The space heaters I use in the winter affect my bill more than my car does. Infrastructure is a big barrier for people that can't park close enough to run a cord out the window like I can. We need charging stations at HEB, libraries, everywhere people go. There are different types of infrastructure, different levels, different plugs. If you have a short commute and a small battery, short-range car like mine, you'll probably be fine with occasional level 2 public charging and level 1 home charging, especially if you have a garage. Just plug it in like your cell phone. There are currently 2 public charging stations in the whole county. One is for Teslas, the other is for everyone else, and both are in Belmead. The rest of those little dots on the map 4 slides ago are restricted. We need charging stations for tourists too. EV registrations have more than doubled in the past 8 months, and there's already 1 million EVs in the U.S. The market will continue to grow in a big way. You can expect this like you expect Jesus. It's coming. You can buy these today. It's not just squishy little cars anymore. EVs aren't just made in America. They're made in Texas. What about it? I ain't concerned. The grid keeps getting cleaner and greener, and we have more battery storage than we did in February 2021. We have the technology to turn our public schools into microgrids. What about mining? Responsible mining has been a thing for years. And when we have enough materials in the recycling chain, we won't need to mine anymore. If you're looking for an electrifying future, TSTC is a good place to go. Some of these jobs don't require a lot of education and have starting salaries at $40,000 to $90,000 a year. There are also free educational resources on the internet. If you want to know more about us, hit me up. Y'all remember this song from last year? It's my fight song. All done. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks. Appreciate you. The next card I have is Andrew Pierce. Mr. Pierce, if you could say your name and address for the record.
Okay. My name is Andrew Pierce. I live at 982 North Houston Street. And I do admit I live in Lorena, but I work here and go here every day. So I'm in the city of Waco almost every day. I passed out a handout. I hope the staff gave it to you. And I have a handout right here. So 2 little handouts. Okay. So this one is about in his image. One of my favorite Bible verses is, "So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them." Now I know that sometimes our feelings, I'm referring to, there's a lot of people here last week who 2 weeks ago who talked about this, is our feelings can deceive us. And I was speaking to a pharmacist about people, about the puberty blockers. This is about the transgender topic, about puberty blockers and how they could affect people and sex change operations. And he was saying that, like, if teenagers or other people take puberty blockers, it's experimental. It can damage them for the rest of their lives. And I'm being told that I have to affirm transgender identity. But if I'm affirming it, that means people are more likely to go through with it. And these puberty blockers damage people and it could sterilize them for life. I know that pharmaceutical companies will have a lifetime customer because you have to take medication, hormone medication for your entire life is what this pharmacist was telling me, just to maintain the secondary sex characteristics. So I don't think I should have to affirm someone when I go to work, especially a younger person, and make them more likely to go through with sex change or puberty blocker or sex change surgery when it damages them. And anti-discrimination laws for transgender, that's what they do. I mean, I've seen it. In California, it's horrible. I mean, I'm from California, and I know people who come from schools, and they say their children are saying they're pansexual after they go to school, after they go to public school. And these non-discrimination ordinances in that state just push that, and no one can speak out against it because the non-discrimination laws are so strong. So this is something that I think is harmful. Now, I'm saying that I've heard people will commit suicide unless we have these, unless we affirm people in their gender identity. But I have this study that was done in Sweden. This is from Ryan Anderson, PhD. And there's a long-term study done in Sweden, probably the longest-term study there's been. And in 10 to 15 years after surgical reassignment, the suicide rate is much higher for people who have had transgender surgery. So.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson.
Yes.
I have one more card, and that is Mr. Ephraim Herring.
Yeah.
Council, I'm Ephraim Herring. I have one major concern for May till September when school starts again. Right now, in District 1, YMCA, normally where you go play basketball and everything else, we've lost 2 places for the kids that could take their energy during the summer. We lost Carver School, and we lost Doris Miller YMCA. After talking to your Parks and Recs, right now, Doris Miller's fields are being used by Rapport Foundation. So my question is, and my suggestion is, why can't we as the citizens use that field? It's being used now. And also, the basketball courts are being used by Rapport Foundation, but they're not being used by the residents. So I'm saying if we're not going to fix the Y in time for the summer break, could there be a resolution where the outside basketball courts, the fields, and the baseball fields be used by the citizens of Waco? That's all I have to suggest. That way you would reduce the crime for the youths and give them something to do.
Thank you, Mr. Herring. That is all the cards I have. Are there any council member reports on committees, boards, commission liaison visits? I have one thing that I wanted to point out, and that is that our own Councilmember Josh Borderood received the American Inns of Court Sandra Day O'Connor Award, which is a really great honor and a really big deal, and he represents both his profession and the law school and our community in this council so well. So just wanted to acknowledge that and say how honored I am to get to sit next to you, and so I'm thankful that whoever was the decider of this award chose right and picked you, because there's no doubt in my mind that the legal profession is better because of the justice that you bring to it. So congratulations on that award.
Mayor. And I didn't speak up fast enough because I would have preferred to have made my comment before, the celebratory notes of the well-deserving award that Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Borderood received. Today, we laid to rest one of Waco's entrepreneurial legends, Theodore Slaughter, which is also Todd's florist, was funeralized today at Tolliver Chapel. And, I just know that he and his business have made an impact on our community for decades, and he will be sorely missed.
Thank you for sharing that. With that, I will ask for any future agenda items, and if none, we will recess the business session for executive session as read into the record by our interim city secretary. Reconvene the business session of the April 19, 2022 meeting to order at 7:59 p.m. There being no further business, we will adjourn.